Good morning, friends. Good morning, Lou.
Good morning. How are we doing today?
Good. Welcome back, everybody. So good to have you here with us. I have a very interesting story for you today, which took place in England, and it was in 1957, 58, so not in the remote past. And it was written up in all the British newspapers and on TV. There's movies made about it. So you can go onto the internet and look and find out about it. I found it fascinating, because Lou and I have spoken a lot about reincarnation, whether it exists, whether it doesn't. But this is a very striking story. And usually, when you hear about stories like this from the backwoods of India or some place like that, people usually scratch their head and say, I don't know how much truth there is in this. However, when it's England and 1957, not 1250 or whatever, then people pay attention, especially if it's written up in or over the internet. So this has to do with a couple, John and Florence, who lived in England in a place called Hexham in 1957. John and Florence met. I won't go into their life particularly, other than to say that John was Catholic and Florence was Protestant.
Mhm.
And neither one of them, their religion allowed them to believe in reincarnation. However, John had read somewhere about reincarnation and was always fascinated by it. They both were very devout Christians, went to church. Florence converted to Catholicism and went along with him. They got married. They had a very successful business. It was like a grocery store and supplied groceries, milk, etc. to the town. They were quite wealthy, well off. Then they had two daughters, Joanne and her younger sister 5 years later. There you go. That's a nice photograph of them. Joanne was 11 and Jaquelin was 6 when they had all gone to church on a Sunday. While they were at church in another part of Hexham, a woman was extremely depressed because she was an alcoholic and her kids had been taken away from her. Now, why she was depressed and whether she got into a car accident that killed these two girls, Joanne and Jaquelin, on purpose or not, is a subject that was up for debate. Many people said because she was upset that her children had been taken away from her, she wanted to hurt somebody else's children. Other people said it was just that she was so drunk and had taken so many pills that she didn't know what she was doing and it was purely an accident. Anyway, she survived. The woman driving the car survived. She was very upset. She wanted to kill herself.
Now, the girls were walking, right? Or the girls were pedestrians.
Yes.
This wasn't a car accident.
That's right.
Yes.
So the woman was depressed. She drank a lot of alcohol, took pills, and wanted to crash the car and kill herself. As she was driving out of her house, the Joanne and Jaquelin, the two sisters, 11 and 6, were with their parents in church and had came out and were walking back to their home with a small young friend, a boy, whose name was Anthony. They were walking next to a brick wall that surrounded a school in Hexham. All of a sudden, they see this car coming at them, veering, going from side to side at a high speed. And the next thing you know, the car crashes, pins the three children against the brick wall, and they die. Awful tragedy, very painful, devastating to the entire town of Hexham and anybody who heard about the story, but most especially to the parents. They were devastated. Their two children had died. John kept praying for the two girls to be reborn in their family. Florence said there's no such thing. In fact, the newspapers say and TV says that John and Florence almost had a divorce because of this concept of reincarnation. The wife said, I don't believe in it. And John said, I cannot bear the thought of living with my daughters having gone unless I believe that they're going to come back to life in our family. So that is often used as by the people who don't believe in reincarnation to say, well, you see, he was such a devout believer in reincarnation, he made a lot of this up. But you will see as we go along that many of these things just can't be made up. So John kept praying, going to church regularly and saying, God, I want my two daughters to be reborn to my wife. Now, the accident took place in May of 1957. 17 months later, the wife had twins. When she first became pregnant, the husband, John, became very excited. He said, my girls are coming back to me. And she said, it's only one child. And he said, no, it has to be two. They went to the doctor, and the doctor asked if there was a history of twins in either of John's or Florence's family. They replied that there was no history of twins in their families. And the father said, then it's unlikely that you're going to have twins. But he says, I only hear one heartbeat anyway. So it's unlikely that there's two children in there. It's just one. This is, to me, that was also interesting. The doctor actually testified to this and said, yeah, I didn't hear anything. I was sure it was only one child. The father, John, kept going to church and said, God, I cannot live with just one of my daughters coming back to me. I want both to be born at the same time. And he said, I don't want boys. I want my two girls. So at that time, I guess they asked the doctor if it was boy or girl. And the doctor says, there's no way for me to tell. And subsequently, he said, hey, you know what? Your wish has come true. Your wife is pregnant with twins. Wow. The wife, Florence, couldn't believe this sudden change from, it's just so strange. All the things that happen is just unbelievable. So twins were born. Twins were born on October 4th, 1958, 17 months after the car accident. What else did I want to tell you? So two girls were born. They were named Gillian and Jennifer. You will see as we go along, that's their photograph. Thanks, Lou. Here, this photograph shows Gillian and Jennifer to be the same age, obviously. So they look like they're the same age. I don't know exactly when this photograph was taken, what age they were. But in the earlier photograph, when they showed Joanna and Jaquelin, Joanne is 11 and Jaquelin is 6. So they might look at a different ages. Joanne, the older sister, always babied her younger sister, Jaquelin, 6, and always took great care of her, protected her. There was never any quarrels or any issues between them. Similarly, when Gillian and Jennifer were born, even though now they were the same age, the parents were surprised that Gillian took care of, I don't know if it's pronounced Gillian or Gillian, Lou, do you? With a G.
So the G, Gillian.
Gillian. So Gillian always took care of her twin sister, Jennifer, even though she was the same age, just in the same way that Joanne took care of Jaquelin. And you will see as we continue with this story that both Gillian and Jennifer knew about the accident, remembered their lives as Joanne and Jaquelin, and remembered everything about their previous life. You'll see this. It's shocking. So Gillian took care of Jennifer. When Jennifer was born, she had a mark on her forehead that it was a birthmark. Now, Jennifer also had a mark on her forehead. Now, there was much discussion, you'll see in the newspapers and on TV, that whether that mark on the forehead was the mark that Jennifer got when her skull was crushed, or whether it was a birthmark that Jaquelin had on her forehead when she was alive. Be that as it may, Jennifer also had another birthmark on her hip, on exactly the same place that Jaquelin had a birthmark. Now, one of the people that has done a lot of research on reincarnation is this man, doctor by the name of Stevenson from the US. Stevenson has written many books on reincarnation. one of his books, I don't remember the exact title, but it talks about birthmarks in reincarnated people. And he says the whole book is devoted to birthmarks in the person that is reborn, having to do with the cause of death in the previous incarnation.
Oh, I see. Yep.
So if Jaquelin were to have a mark on her forehead, either from her previous birth, because it was a birthmark, or because of an accident, then she would have that same birthmark when she's reborn as Jennifer. Anyway, Jennifer did have birthmarks all over her body that resembled those that Jaquelin had either during her lifetime or because of the accident. Both Florence and John looked at these birthmarks and were surprised when they were born to say they had the same marks as Jaquelin had. Jaquelin was the younger one, if you remember.
Mm-hmm.
And also they remembered the mark that Jaquelin had when she fell with a bucket, and the bucket caused her to have a deep scar. So the girls, when they were 3 months of age, the parents said, let's move from Hexham, because the girls were young. They didn't want them to grow up in the same town and have people ask them questions, because this already started making a stir about these twins being born. So they moved from Hexham to a place called Whitley Bay.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, if the girls were 3 months old, they wouldn't know much about Hexham. However, when the kids were 4 years old, they kept talking about the previous town. And the father said, okay, we'll take you back to Hexham. Even though it was close by, they had never, 4-year-old girls, they never went there unless the father and mother took them. So Florence and John put them in the car, took them to Hexham, parked the car, and decided to walk around. And the girls were so excited, and they knew exactly where they were. And John and Florence were shocked. Now, Florence was starting to slowly say, there's no question about it, that this is reincarnation. Even she was surprised as these various things unfolded. They were on a hill, and there was a field, a school ground field, that the girls used to play in when they were Joanna and Jaquelin. And that field, the school had actually, within the time period, 5 years, that from the time of the accident until they were 4 years old and taken there, had converted the school ground into the playground into a building.
Mm-hmm.
So the kids, they were running up the hill, excited to go to the playground where they used to play, and the father and mother running behind them. And they said, we'll show you the playground where we used to play. The father and mother went there, and they said the girls were disappointed that the playground was no longer there. Now, the girls could have had no way of knowing that there was a playground there or that they used to play in it.
Yeah, how would they know? Yeah.
How would they know? They were taken out of the town when they were 3 months old, did not return there until they were 4 years old. How would they know that there was a park there? That was one thing that made Florence quite surprised.
So this conversation about their past life was ongoing through the 4 years to this point. Yeah.
Yes, because John was reveling in the fact that God had in his mind, God has listened to his prayers,
Mm-hmm.
and given him his daughters back. And he was telling everybody that this was the case, and everything that occurred, he would tell them. Florence resisted it because she was extremely religious and did not want to go against her religious beliefs. So, but she was more and more surprised until you'll see at the end when she heard the girls talking about the car accident, she just gave it up. She said, that's it. There's no question in my mind. But I'll tell you a little bit more. Go ahead, Larry. Lou, you wanted to ask me something?
No, it's just it's fascinating that probably prompted by the father, but even that they had these details is fascinating.
Right. So anyway, they knew the way to the school. They knew the way to the playground. The father and mother were holding back to see how much they knew. Now, at one point, and by the way, this only lasted till the age of 5. So as they got closer and closer to the age of 5, the memories of their past life became dimmer and dimmer. And after the age of 5, they didn't remember much about anything. But the closer they were to the point where they first started talking and speaking, the more clear their memories were of their previous lives. The twins, Gillian and Jennifer, asked the mother once whether where their toys were. And the mother thought that she was, because don't forget, the mother was absolutely blocking out any possibility that these were Joanne and Jaquelin reincarnated.
Right.
When she said, your toys, they're right here. Here they are. And they said, no, not these toys, the other toys. And the mother said, what other toys? These are all your toys right here. And she said, no, no, the other toys. Florence realized that they were talking about toys that Joanne and Jaquelin had had. And two, as it turned out, the parents who had not been able to throw away old clothes and old toys that belonged to Joanne and Jaquelin. They had put it up in the attic.
Right.
So when the girls, Gillian and Jennifer, asked for those toys, the mother went up into the attic and the kids came up with her and they were so excited to see all their old stuff, very excited. The mother brought it down, put it in their room, and immediately, now the normal process of any child under the age of 5, if you put a whole host of toys in front of them, would just be to grab willy-nilly any toys that were in front of them that they liked. These twins, Gillian and Jennifer, started actually, without any arguments, they knew exactly which toys belonged to Joanne and which toys belonged to Jaquelin. And Gillian took whatever toys belonged to Joanne, and Jennifer took whatever toys belonged to Jaquelin. And to their mother's shock and surprise, they actually gave the names of the dolls that they had named when they were Joanne and Jaquelin. The mother was absolutely floored.
That's spooky.
There's so much spooky stuff here. Yeah. I had my hair standing on end when I first heard about this story. So they loved those toys and they played with it. Another time, the younger daughter took out an apron belonging to the mother. Now, hold on. Let me back up a second. The mother used to wear a particular apron when she was baking, when Joanne and Jaquelin were young. Jaquelin was 11 when she died. Sorry, Joanne was 11 when she died, and Jaquelin was 6. Joanne used to go to school during the day, and Jaquelin was still at home when the mother used to put on this particular apron to bake. And after Joanne and Jaquelin were killed, the mother stopped baking. She became depressed, and everything was put away, including that apron. Now, the father one day decided to do some painting, and he wanted to put on some apron over himself so as not to spoil his clothes. He put on the mother's baking apron that she used to use when Joanne and Jaquelin were around. She put on the apron. Both the girls looked at it. Gillian, who used to be Joanne, the older one, had no recognition of the apron. Jennifer, who was Jaquelin, the younger one, 6 years old, immediately said to her father, "Why are you wearing mother's apron?" And so anybody could say, well, that's a woman's apron. So he said, "Oh, I just don't want my clothes to get spoiled." And she said, "But that's for baking. That's not for painting. That's what mother used to wear or wears when she bakes." And Gillian, the other twin, had no memory of this. This is fascinating.
Yeah.
And Jennifer actually got mad at Gillian for saying, "How could you not remember? How could you not remember?" And Gillian said, "I have no memory of ever seeing this apron." Now, the father explained, and the mother actually grudgingly said later, that when she used to bake, Joanne, the older sister, used to be at school. So she never actually saw or recognized the apron. So that was another piece of evidence. What was interesting is that both John and Florence said that the girls had very similar personalities to Joanne and Jaquelin. Gillian was very, very similar in her personality to Joanne, and Jennifer was similar in her personality to Jaquelin. As I said before, Gillian used to take care of Jennifer just as Joanne took care of Jaquelin. And they enjoyed in their rebirth the same games as they did when they were older, the same dolls. And most interestingly, they had the same desires and likes and dislikes. Because going back to our episodes on Gita, Lou, Remember when we said the likes and dislikes are carried over from
Yes.
life to life, that is carved into you. You don't know why you like a certain food when you're a child, and another person hates it and says, even before tasting it, says, no, I'm not going to eat it. Um, Gillian and Jennifer had the same likes and dislikes of food as they did before. Now, Florence continued to reject the concept of reincarnation. Slowly but surely, she was getting convinced. One day, she was in a place where the girls did not know she was could hear what they were saying. They were talking about the car accident, and they were saying what happened, and they saw the car coming towards them, and then the car hit them, and Jacqueline, the younger sister, or vice versa, I don't remember which sister, said to the other, I could actually see blood coming out of your eyes. And the mother was so shocked. She said, that was the last straw. Once I heard that, I knew that these were my daughters, Joanne and Jaquelin, have come back. And she says, whatever my religion says, I cannot disregard this particular thing. There's no question that this was the accident. Another thing, when they were children, they were having nightmares. And Stevenson says about this, when there's horrible things that happen where somebody dies in the previous life, the same nightmares when you're less than 5 years old keep coming back until you get to be 5 and the nightmares go away. But these girls used to both have nightmares of car accidents. And whenever there was a car coming towards them, the girls would clutch to each other or the parents and say, that car is going to come to get us.
Yeah.
And one time they were standing there, a car started somewhere. Just the starting of the car caused them to be scared. There's a lot more that you all should look at for yourself. I mean, it's more fascinating when you see these things on the internet. You can see their photographs of their home, newspaper articles. There's always going to be somebody or the other that says, this couldn't have happened, or it happened because of this. You make up your own minds. You'll see the evidence. You'll see what the father said. You see how the mother then changed her mind and came back to believing that these were her daughters come back to life, and then you can decide on your own. But I would love to hear what you think about this after you read about it on the internet, and there's books about this.
This is fascinating from a scientific standpoint because we know knowledge gets passed down. Like, for example, I don't know if you own cats. I was told that cats will not eat their food if it's next to water because they think the food is dead and might spoil the water. Now, that's knowledge that's passed down. So where's the limit? What kind of knowledge gets passed down through DNA or through just inheritance and that type of thing? And, what are the limits on those types of knowledge? Could any of this knowledge been passed down from the parents? I mean, obviously it was very traumatic, probably changed them biologically as well. I mean, reincarnation is fascinating, but you wonder, just looking at it from a scientific standpoint, what are the limits on what kind of knowledge gets passed down?
Yeah. So you bring up a very important point, and something that we've actually discussed when we talk about the Gita. Friends, Lou and I, prior to this, had done 216 episodes of, and you can find those. It says, Arise Arjuna, the Bhagavad Gita. And there's one that we labeled a field trip, and it has to do with reincarnation. Anyway, throughout those episodes of the Gita tells us that when a human being dies, the body drops, but the mind and intellect continues to the next life, to the next body, with the same likes and dislikes, raga and dvesha, as it had in the previous life. And those actually get compounded from one life to the next because the likes become further hardened and the dislikes. So those memories are intact, and they're actually carved into the memories of these people that are reincarnated. So the question that Lou is asking is, how much of this can go on? And the beauty is that everything that one has gone through in every previous life is there, hardwired and carved into our brain. We don't have the capacity to bring it all up to our forefront, especially after the age of 5. But there's another story about a young boy who is born and kept saying that he was a pilot in a plane. And that was in the United States, Lou. 60 Minutes and CBS Morning brought up TV interviews with this 5-year-old. And he remembered his life as a pilot before he was reborn. And he kept saying, I'm Jack, I'm Jack. And he knew all about planes. And he had nightmares about plane crashes. So everything from every previous life is there in your system. It's like a computer that when you take the hard disk out and put it in another beautiful body of a computer, still remembers all the data that was on that hard disk. You may not actually pull it all onto the screen every time you turn the computer on, but you can access it.
And what you found out in your work and in your hobby with hypnosis is that we have everything in the pile. It's just the pile gets deeper. That's why probably these memories are more bold before you get to 5 years old, because your own life experience starts to get on top of it and starts to get in between your recollection of that and your older memories.
Yeah, Lou is bringing up, and this was not rehearsed, friends. We would not discuss this before, Lou and I. But now Lou is bringing up another series of podcasts and YouTube videos that we did called Memoirs of a Psychiatrist, in which I've used hypnosis as a psychiatrist to help the police to bring back memories of witnesses who have seen murders or license plates or bank robberies and various things. So many cases we were successful in months after they'd actually seen a license plate, because even a glimpse of that license plate was stored in the mind, even though consciously the person said, there's no way I remember that, seeing that license plate.
Yeah, so God knows what's stored in our minds that's been piled over by our day-to-day experiences.
Right. And that's where people who are self-realized get rid of all the clutter, and everything that they have is crystal clear. They know about their previous lives, they know about this life, and they know about everything else that is around us. And they say this is all just a myth. This is all Maya. Friends, thank you for joining us, and I hope you join us next time. We try to include in here stories of different kinds. Everybody has a different taste. Some people like this story about reincarnation. Some people might like the story about how Vedic people went from India to other countries. Let's try and mix up all these stories, but it would be helpful to Lou and me if you wrote to us and tell us what you like and what it is about this that you like, dislike, etc. arisearjuna@gmail.com.
And we'll see you next time.
Thank you.